Whenever the conversation turns to progress in India, it almost always ends up in the same place, economic growth. We hear all about the rising GDP, growing consumption, all the charts going up and to the right. And look, it's a powerful story, right? A nation on the move.
But what if that's not really the whole picture? What if the way we measure success is missing something incredibly important about what it actually feels like to live day to day?
And this quote, man, it just nails it. You don't live your life as a line on a chart. You live it through a series of daily moments. The air you're breathing, the noise outside your window, the stress of just getting to work. And when you start looking at it that way, you realize the real issue isn't just about how much money people have, but about the constant, grinding friction of daily life.
Okay, so let's actually give this thing a name, this problem that the big economic numbers just fly right over. The source material for this explainer calls it life as constant friction. It's this idea that for so many people, just existing has become a state of constant struggle.
So what is this constant friction? It's not some big dramatic event. It's more like the background noise of your life. It's that low-grade ambient hostility of noise and chaos and stress that just makes everything feel a little bit harder than it needs to be.
All right, so what does this friction actually feel like in the real world? Well, let's start with what you hear. It's that inescapable noise, the nonstop honking, the random loudspeakers, the construction that never ends. It's like a constant assault on your senses, where just a moment of silence feels like an absolute luxury.
And then you've got the very air we breathe. In so many of our cities, for huge chunks of the year, the simple act of taking a breath is a genuine health risk. That adds this invisible layer of physical stress to every single day.
And this feeling, it just gets cranked up to 11 in our shared environments. Our public spaces, our parks, our sidewalks, they often feel chaotic, overcrowded, and just not taken care of. It sends this message loud and clear that public comfort just isn't a priority.
And all of this comes to a head with the daily commute, right? From millions of people, getting from home to work and back again isn't just a routine. It's a grueling, exhausting battle that sucks the life out of you before your workday is even started.
Okay, so here's the real kicker. This constant friction isn't just annoying. It has real, tangible consequences. It's a massive psychological burden. It leads to shorter tempers, less empathy for the people around you, more aggression on the streets, and just this deep collective feeling of being emotionally drained. When everyone is stressed all the time, it stops looking like a problem and starts to feel, well, just normal.
Which, of course, brings up a huge question. Why? Why do people put up with all of this? The answer, according to our source material, is deep-seated. It's a psychological framework that holds the whole thing in place, something called the survival mindset.
And this slide, this is where it gets really fascinating. The survival mindset, which comes from a long history of scarcity, is all about endurance. It teaches you to just adjust to bad conditions instead of demanding that they get better. But a living mindset is totally different. It's about aspiring to something more, to ease, to improvement, to basic dignity. The problem, the real trap, is when that old survival software is still running long after it should have been updated, making us mistake resignation for strength.
And this creates this totally bizarre situation, what's called the middle income paradox. It's when people's personal incomes go up, but the public systems around them don't. All that new wealth just pours gasoline on the fire of chaos. More cars mean worse traffic. More construction means more noise. More spending means more trash. You're literally earning more money, but your quality of life actually feels like it's going downhill.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem, but just pointing fingers isn't enough, right? How do we even begin to think about fixing this? We need a totally new way of looking at it, what our source calls a lens for repair.
And to do that, we have to ask a really powerful question. How did other places manage to make daily life better before they were super rich? This question just blows up the whole assumption that a country has to get wealthy first, and only then, as some kind of reward, can it start thinking about quality of life.
Because, and this is so important, history shows us there's another way. There are clear examples of societies that didn't wait to become rich before they got organized. They focused on creating order before they had widespread affluence.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. You've got two totally different blueprints here. Take post-war Europe. Even when they were broke, they rebuilt their cities around the idea of livability. Walkable streets, public parks, noise control, they saw it as a public duty. Then you have East Asian cities. They had a different insight, but just as powerful. Creating order and discipline reduces stress, which makes people more productive and actually fuels economic growth. So in both cases, get this, a better life wasn't the prize you got at the end. It was the engine that drove the whole thing forward.
So, okay, great. History lesson over. What does this actually mean for India right now? How do we take those lessons and turn them into a real practical path forward?
Well, it really boils down to 4 key pillars. First, enforcement. We have to start treating rules about noise and pollution like serious health policies, not just polite suggestions. Second, accountability. No more finger pointing. Someone has to be clearly in charge of our streets, our parks, our sanitation. Third, human-centered design. We have to start building for people, not just for cars. That means prioritizing safety, walkability, and basic comfort. And finally, predictability. You know what's better than a fancy, world-class project that only works half the time? Simple, reliable, basic systems that you can actually count on every single day.
And look, it's just as crucial to know what not to do. These one-off, flashy cleanliness drives that disappear after a week, they don't work. Lecturing people about civic duty when there are no consequences for breaking the rules, a waste of time. And the big one, expecting good-hearted individuals to somehow fix massive, systemic problems caused by public neglect, it's just never going to happen. These are all dead ends.
So let's wrap this up by talking about the real cost of doing nothing. And it's not loud or dramatic. It's a quiet cost, a creeping one.
Man, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? The damage from all this constant friction. It isn't a heart attack. It's a slow, creeping cancer. It erodes our well-being bit by bit. It just wears people down, creating a society of tired, irritable citizens who are losing their ability to feel empathy. A society that starts to see basic comfort not as a fundamental right, but as some kind of fancy indulgence.
And that leaves us with one last really important question to think about. If the basic act of just living feels like a constant struggle, day in and day out, are we going to keep confusing our endurance for virtue? Or is it finally time to demand something more? To demand not just the ability to survive, but the right to a life of dignity, of ease, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of joy.